Hey YouTube, good morning. It's Chuck. Well, welcome back to the apiary. It's Thanksgiving Day, and there's not many things to do in the bee yard this time of year, but I figured I'd just make a quick video, kind of keeping you guys up to date with where I'm at and where we are here in Zone 9B. And that is actually some news we could talk a little bit about here before we dive into a couple of hives. The 2023 USDA Hardiness zone map came out for the United States again, and some zones changed. Before this new update, we were in Zone 9A here in Jacksonville, but they have changed it based on the lowest winter temperature over the last decade and a half or so. They moved us into Zone B. So that basically means the 5-degree range of our lowest average annual winter temperature has gone up by around 5 degrees. So that's kind of evidence of some climate change possibility there. But in any case, the climate, it doesn't really matter how we change our bees, but maybe just how we reference to others where we are when we reference our bees. I'm not going to change the way I manage my bees here because we moved from Zone 9A to Zone 9B, but I will, in communicating to others and letting them know where I am, use that as my future reference point. So basically, wherever you are, maybe take a look. I'll put some images here in the video and some links to where the new chart is. And you can look back over time and see previously how they have moved both in our area and perhaps where you live. It's a fascinating thing to look at and to kind of look how the features in your area change, perhaps the temperatures. And one small example, look here in Florida, Zone 9B takes this big kind of long route up the St. Johns River, which is the body of water near where I live, and perhaps that adds a couple extra degrees to our temperature. But then it goes around the Orlando, Central Florida, and then down below Orlando, it's 9B, but Orlando is actually a little bit warmer in Zone 10. Just interesting how human population and cities change the average temperatures in the areas where we live. Just some interesting things to think about. Okay, what am I doing here today? I'm making sure my hives don't get too light. I've got some 2-to-1 syrup mixed up here. So that's 2 parts sugar to 1 part water by weight. And that is what you feed bees this time of year. The reason you don't feed them 1-to-1 or lighter syrup than that is generally because you do not want to stimulate the queen into overlaying a brood pattern with food that is similar to nectar. And also it takes less energy and water collection for them to process this 2-to-1 syrup and consume it. It's a little closer to the consistency of honey than actual nectar is, which is why we feed lighter syrup in the spring. So if you ever wondered why we do 2-to-1 in the winter and 1-to-1 in the spring, that is the primary reason. The bee's ability of collecting water and processing the sugar, and also it's easier for them to consume this time of year, and they store it without necessarily taking it and generating a stimulating pattern for the queen. In addition to the 2-to-1 syrup, I'm going to continue to add a little bit of food here. This is a homemade pollen patty that I make. This is a variation of some patties that are available on the internet. I know Cayman's got one out there. This is a variation off of his. It does use some glycerin in there to kind of keep it soft. And also I've got a couple extra tweaks that I like to make to my patties here in Florida. We do have some, the small hive beetles aren't this time of year very bad, but pollen obviously is something you have to be careful with in a hive because it can turn into a small hive beetle fest if you're not careful or if you leave it in there too long. So that's basically all I'm going to do today. I'm going to put some sugar in these hives that are still here in this small out yard, give them a little bit of pollen, and then maybe just generally take a look at how the bees are. I don't have my jacket on today. I will talk a little bit about the weather. It's about 55 degrees right now, so it is above kind of the 50-degree threshold to open a hive. But it is cool and a little bit breezy, which does mean the bees may not be very happy compared to where it was yesterday and the day before, where it was much, much warmer. All right, so come along with me today. Let's see what we see. Okay, I've got you up on the tripod today. So like I said earlier, I'm not gonna get in these hives very often, or very long, not often. I'm just gonna crack them open, take a look at the cluster. Very nice cluster there. Very happy with that. I'm just gonna put this pollen patty on top. Put this back on here because my feeder is in the top here, so I do not want to disturb that primary cluster. That was a good peak. See, you didn't leave that open very long. The bees were there. They started fanning immediately. They did not like that cool air coming in there, you know, because basically they keep these hives in the mid 90s. And see up top how there's no cluster up top? I do see bees down in between here, but not many. And I'm looking in my feeder, and my feeder is empty. So that's what this is for. While I'm feeding, these 3-gallon jugs, I think, are the best way to do this in an out yard. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways of solving this problem. This flexible hose allows me to bend it and move it without spilling too much. I do have a cap on here, and another thing I'll show you on the tip as soon as I bring this out. I have a screen on the end of my feeder that I love to use right here. See that? That's because the bees, when the robbing season is there and they're out flying, they will go down that tube and essentially cluster up inside and start eating that sugar water from the top. So that screen keeps the bees out of my sugar water. So we are done here. I filled up that internal gallon feeder. I gave them the honey. I'm sorry, the honey. The pollen patty. Looked at the cluster. I don't have my pen with me today, so I'm not even, well, I do have a pen over there. I'll make a note on here, just the general tendency of how that looks. So this nuke is done. Let's move over. All right, beekeepers, here we go. 1, 2, 3 hives in here. Again, I'm gonna kind of keep this minimized down here, how I do it. I do like to have my pollen patties prepped before I go in. All I do is score the wax paper so the bees can get at it a little bit without having to dig all the way through. Makes it a little bit easier for them to get at. So first glance is usually how, oh my goodness, look at this hive. It is happy. That is a cluster that I am proud of. So I'm just gonna put this patty on here, give them a little sip. I see lots of stored food in here, so the stores generally look good. I do have to make sure I don't run out of sugar syrup for each of these, but I'm just gonna give them a little sip here. This hive is fine. I'm very happy with the way that initial look was of that. All right, done. 1 hive. Quick and dirty. That's essentially what we're after. A little bit breezy. Probably can't tell in the video. Maybe you can hear it through the mic, but all right, here we go. Second hive. This is the smaller one. Oh my gosh, they look happy too. This is great news, everyone. Nice sized clusters, giving them some pollen. The pollen has a lot of sugar in it too. So giving them pollen like this is a little bit like feeding fondant almost. And I do want to talk a little bit about that. I don't do fondant here in Florida. There are enough 50-degree days that liquid 2-to-1 syrup is completely adequate for beehives in Florida. If you live up north and you got bees that have to live with days below with no 50 degrees, and I use 50 degrees because that's generally the temperature where they will come up and take liquid food. So down in the, how do I describe it? Basically, they won't come up and process liquid food kind of, you know, at the colder temperature. So you have to give them a harder sugar. You can give them fondant, or you could also just give them a granular sugar, cakes, things like that. There's other ways of doing it, but generally that's the rule I follow. So this hive over here has been the largest, so that's why I've got a larger pollen patty. I have the least amount of syrup here. That's why oh my gosh, these bees are happy. I don't know if you can see that or not, but generally this has been a great little visit to the outyard. Couldn't be happier. Now we'll finish off this 3-gallon jug, and again, I'm looking down, I can see stores, I can see stored honey without even cracking it open at the top of the frames. Now granted, I can't see how far down the frames that stored honey goes. And on a long Langstroth like this, you really can't lift the back of a hive to determine how heavy it is. And that jug is empty. So a full 3 gallons. And these ladies are going back to staying cozy warm. All right, so what did we do today? Sugar syrup, a little bit of pollen, quick hive inspection, making sure they got enough food. It's the Thanksgiving weekend here in Jacksonville, Florida, Zone 9B, which is a new zone for us, a little bit warmer. And it's just essentially trying to get our bees into the maple pollen flow, which starts around New Year's Day. And from then on, it's about managing the thinness of the sugar syrup for the growth of the bees you are ready for your splits and everything into queen rearing. And queen rearing for me is generally around Valentine's Day. Obviously, I tweak it a week or two based on the weather, but Valentine's Day is where essentially I'm starting grafting. And believe it or not, that's not very far away. I'll take you along that journey with me too. Hope you enjoyed this. Leave some comments below. Happy Thanksgiving for everyone that watches this, that celebrates that holiday. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day.